Hello to Wallaton. I'm Sam, and it is time for another edition of Kitchen Science, where I get to combine two of my favorite things, my kitchen and science. And today we are going to do one of the age-old, super simple science experiments that you can do in your kitchen. We are going to do an experiment known as sink or float. It's very simple, it's super fun, and let me tell you what you need. All right, for our sink or float experiment, here's what you need. You will need a vessel. It could be a vase, it could be a bowl, it could be a plastic container. It just needs to be clear, and you need to be able to fill it up with water, so it needs to lack holes. So grab yourself something big and clear and fill it up with water. Okay. Next, you will need a bowl of junk. And by that, I mean race around the house and find a bunch of random stuff that you think might be interesting to find out whether or not it will sink or float. So things that you think might go either way. Definitely just scour the house and find all kinds of fun stuff. And last but not least, you will need an orange, or, as this is, a clementine or a mandarin orange. So you need an orange or something of the orange variety. All right, let's do some experimenting. All right, it's time to try some experimenting. Now, sometimes what I do here in Kitchen Science is more of a demonstration. It's not really an experiment. This is a straight up experiment because you are testing constantly what is going to sink and float. So that means you have a million opportunities to make a hypothesis, which is just that fancy word for making a guess about what is going to happen. So let's start making some hypotheses. Let's see. Let's start with rubber ducky. Sink or float? That guy is a floater, and that is no surprise, right? What was your hypothesis? My hypothesis was that he would float, and indeed, he floated. Okay, so let's try another one. Rubber ducky, what about good old Donkey Kong? Sink or float? Oh, whoa. Total sinker. No doubt there, right? He goes in the sink pile. Okay, let's see if he stands up there. Nope. Okay, sink pile. Okay, float or sink? Scissors. What do you think? Total sink, right? Okay, so we got another sinker. Let's put that in the sinker pile right there. Let's see, what about shaky egg? Float or sink? What do you think? It's a poem. Oh, that didn't just float. That almost wanted to bounce right out of the water. That's a super floater right there. All right, so we got a couple of floaters and a couple of sinkers. Let's try. Ooh, here's a tricky one. Centaur, Iron Man, Dumbledore. My son likes to combine his Legos, as I'm sure many of yours do as well. Will this Centaur, Iron Man, Dumbledore sink or float? Ooh, he took a dive, but he floated in the end. And it's like he's doing the back paddle, right? Like, he's like laying on his back there. Okay, so he's a floater. He goes over here. Let's try another one. If you're familiar with the Cars series, Jeff Gorvette. Sink or float? What do you think? He didn't just sink. He splashed me. Definitely a sinker. Okay. We got some sinkers and we got some floaters. So you have the general idea. You could do this for a long time. Now, we're going to try with something else entirely. We've got lots of stuff that's fun to try and sink or float. But now I've got one that I think is a little harder. This is an orange, a clementine, a mandarin. To be honest, I'm not sure what it is. I think it's called a clementine. I always buy those bags called cuties, and I never look to see exactly what they are. But it's like a little tiny orange. Do you think this will sink or float? Should we try it out? Did it do what you expected? Did it sink or did it float? It floated, and it feels heavy, so you might think it would have sank, but it did not. It floated. Now, here's the magical part of this. And if you have an orange or a mandarin or a clementine, I highly recommend trying it with that. Both because this portion of it is an amazing smell. There's nothing better than the smell of a peeled orange. But also because it's fascinating. So, what am I doing here? Underneath, I am peeling my orange. Here's my orange peel, and here's my orange. Will this sink or float? What do you think? Let's see. Let's put it in there and find out. Whoa, that sunk like a rock. So when it had its peel, it floated. And when the peel was gone, it sank. Why? I think it's time for some science. All right, it's time for some science. It's time for some science. It's time for some science today. Here you go with some science. What's happening here? The stuff that floats is floating because it isn't as dense as the water that it's displacing. Okay, so this is all about density, this experiment. So when you look at something like this, air has like hardly any density. I don't know if it has any at all. And this thing is filled with air. So when you put it in, it floats no problem at all. Now this, on the other hand, Donkey Kong, is dense. He's thick plastic. So when you put him in, he's denser than the water, so he just sinks straight to the bottom. Now, when you're hypothesizing, it's tempting to hypothesize about the shape, right? Because like you have a perfect spherical shape. You might think that that's perfect for floating, right? And when you're talking about a ping pong ball, it is perfect for floating. But grab a marble and you'll see that I could break it because it goes so fast down to the bottom. Hits glass on glass. So it isn't about the shape. It's about the density of the items. Now, what's happening with the orange? So with the orange, I'm going to grab a peeled and an unpeeled one. Okay, when you have the orange with the peel on, the peel itself is filled with air molecules. Indeed, the peel just is tons of air. When you take the peel away, that air is gone. So the density of the orange is greater because the peel is not dense because it includes so much air that it allows the item to float. Pretty amazing, right? Yeah. So go forth, grab stuff in your kitchen, find out if it can sink or float, and play with some science. I'll see you in a few weeks.